Have you ever held a crystal in your hand and wondered, why do people believe these things have power? Why have humans across thousands of years, across completely different civilizations, all become fascinated with stones, gems, crystals, and minerals? Are crystals actually doing something? Or are we projecting meaning onto beautiful rocks because humans desperately want to believe that there's magic hidden in the world? And maybe the more uncomfortable question is this. If belief itself changes the brain, if rituals affect emotions, if intention changes behavior, then even if crystals aren't magical, does that automatically mean that they're meaningless? Or that they're still playing a positive role psychologically? Today, we're diving into the science, psychology, spirituality, symbolism, history, and mystery behind crystals. And by the end of this episode, you may not necessarily believe crystals have supernatural powers, but you'll probably understand why humans never stop believing that they might. Hey friends, welcome back to The Expanding Soul, a place where we explore growth, healing, and what it really means to become the best version of ourselves. I'm Kristen, and today we're diving into one of the most controversial and fascinating spiritual topics out there, crystals. Some people believe crystals have healing energy, raise vibration, protect from negativity, and even influence consciousness. Others say it's pure pseudoscience and nothing more than the placebo effect. But the deeper you look, the more interesting this conversation becomes, because crystals sit at the intersection of geology, physics, psychology, spirituality, and human belief itself. So today, instead of instantly dismissing crystals or blindly accepting every spiritual claim about them, we're going to explore both sides honestly. Not to tell you what to believe, but to understand why this topic has survived for thousands of years. Crystals are huge in the modern spiritual and metaphysical world, but crystals aren't something that are new to humanity. Humans have attributed meaning and power to stones for thousands of years. Let's talk about lapis lazuli, which is a deep blue, sometimes violet stone with what looks like golden speckles. It's a metamorphic rock, meaning it was created by pre-existing rocks being transformed through intense heat and pressure. Most gems are made of a single mineral, but not this one. Lapis lazuli is primarily made up of 3 minerals, but sometimes it can contain more. Lazurite is what gives it the rich royal blue color. Pyrite is what gives it the gold or brass-colored flakes. And calcite can be seen in its milky white veins or patches. Ancient Egyptians used lapis lazuli regularly. It was one of the most valued stones, right under gold and silver. It was highly desirable for Egyptians because they associated the deep blue and golden specks with the night sky. They even believed that the gods' hair and eyebrows were made up of lapis lazuli and would frequently use it in their depictions of the gods. It was also highly treasured by the ancient civilizations of Mesopotamia, China, Greece, and Rome. Amethyst is another stone that has been highly sought after through time. This is a stone you're likely already familiar with. It's a purple variety of quartz. Ancient Greeks associated the stone with Dionysus, the god of wine and pleasure. They believed that this stone could prevent drunkenness and keep whoever was wearing it in a clear-headed and quick-witted state. The ancient Chinese would use jade, with evidence dating back to the Neolithic period, so roughly 8,000 years ago. Jade is found all over ancient Chinese culture, in figurines, ornaments, and burial sites. They believed jade could help them transition into the eternal realm easier, so it's often found with high-ranking burial sites. It was also found on the famous terracotta warriors. And jade isn't easy to carve. It's actually harder or stronger than steel, so you can't just carve it down with a knife. Ancient Chinese would create a mixture of harder materials like diamond, quartz, garnet, and corundum mixed with water, and they'd use that as an abrasive to slowly wear the jade down over time. The main thing to understand here is that humankind has been infatuated with gems and stones forever, all around the world. Even in religious texts, crystals appear constantly. In the Bible, precious stones are associated with heaven, priesthood, protection, and divine beauty. And what's interesting is that these civilizations developed these beliefs independently of each other. Different cultures, different continents, different religions, yet humans repeatedly attached spiritual meaning to crystals. Why? Well, psychologically, humans are pattern-seeking creatures. We naturally assign meaning to rare, beautiful, symmetrical things. And crystals are extraordinary objects. Think about it. A crystal looks almost unnatural. They have perfect geometry, sharp symmetry, complex patterns, all from forming naturally underground over millions of years. To ancient humans, crystals probably looked supernatural. Honestly, even today, they still kind of do. And there's something deeper happening psychologically. Humans associate order with intelligence. We're drawn towards symmetry because the brain perceives it as organized, stable, and safe. So when humans discovered these perfectly ordered structures emerging naturally from the earth, it probably felt profound, like nature itself was hiding intelligence beneath the surface. And strangely enough, science eventually revealed that crystals are deeply connected to structure, order, and energy. Just maybe not always in the way spiritual culture claims. So, scientifically speaking, what is a crystal? A crystal is a solid material whose atoms are arranged in an extremely organized, repeating pattern. This internal atomic structure is called a crystal lattice, and most of the time, each gemstone has its own unique signature crystal lattice. And this doesn't apply to just rocks and stones. Snowflakes, table salt, and sucrose crystals, or sugar crystals, are some examples of crystals we may not typically think of. But because we are talking about gemstones here, let's walk through the process of the formation of one of the most commonly known crystals, quartz. Quartz crystals form when silicon and oxygen atoms bond together and create silicon dioxide. Silicon dioxide at the microscopic level looks like a tetrahedron, or a three-sided pyramid. Over time, the tetrahedrons will stack on top of each other and create the quartz crystal. And in order to form even a small crystal, it requires billions of silicon dioxide tetrahedrons. This can occur in two ways. The first is through the slow cooling of molten magma. The second is the most common way, which is through hydrothermal solutions in underground pockets of boiling silica-rich water. Once that silica finds somewhere it can cool down, maybe a crack up against a cooler rock, it starts to crystallize. While pure quartz is a colorless gem, quartz can grow in beautiful varieties of colors due to slight impurities. For example, amethyst is purple quartz that is created when the boiling silica-rich water also has iron in it. The iron will essentially fill in a couple of gaps in the silicon dioxide lattice. This can happen from natural radiation or through geothermal heat. Now, this is just quartz, but every crystal has its own unique formation process, its own lattice structure, and even its own amount of time needed to crystallize. Some crystals, like rubies and sapphires, can take millions of years to form. Think about that. You could hold a crystal in your hand that began forming before human civilization even existed. Now here's where things get really interesting, because crystals actually do interact with energy physically. Let's go back to our last example of quartz. Because quartz has an asymmetrical lattice, when you apply pressure to it, you can actually generate a charge. Because quartz is made up of oxygen, which has a slightly negative charge, and silicon, which has a slightly positive charge, its neutral state is for those to cancel each other out and for it to have zero charge. But when stress is applied to the crystal, like squeezing, it shifts the internal ions and causes the original charges to shift. That displacement breaks the neutral charge and allows for a negative charge to accumulate on one face of the crystal and a positive charge to be created on another face, just like a battery. And this isn't spiritual theory. This is measurable physics. In fact, quartz crystals are used in almost every technology you use on a daily basis. They're in watches, computers, radios, microphones, medical devices, cell phones. Your technology literally depends on crystals functioning consistently. Every time you check your phone, a crystal is helping make that technology work. Now, this is where people sometimes make a leap. They hear that crystals interact with energy physically and assume that automatically proves spiritual healing claims. But scientifically, that's not true. Just because quartz can generate an electrical charge under pressure does not mean rose quartz heals heartbreak or amethyst raises consciousness. Those are separate claims. But what is fascinating is that crystals are not just random, meaningless objects either. They possess highly ordered physical properties that modern civilization actively uses. So the conversation becomes more nuanced than magic rocks versus stupid pseudoscience. Reality is usually more complicated than internet arguments can make it seem. Now that we've covered the science, let's explore the spiritual side of crystals. The metaphysical or spiritual community's beliefs about crystals stem from history. I do want to be clear, though, that the information used in this section can all be found in the references, but they aren't exactly verified scientific or historical sources. As we've experienced in past episodes of The Expanding Soul, sometimes the more spiritual side of things can be difficult to find in the professional education world. So as I move forward, I'll explain this perspective in full, but just know that some of the following historical aspects may or may not be fully proven. Many ancient cultures believed that specific gems possess certain vibrations or energy fields that could allow someone to have specific emotional, spiritual, or physical benefits. Apparently, it all started with the ancient Sumerians, who would carry crystals into battle, grind them into elixirs, and inscribe them with spells. They believed quartz, obsidian, and hematite could trap energies, spirits, or intentions, and they'd wear amber to ward off evil spirits. As we've already confirmed, the ancient Egyptians revered lapis lazuli. Spiritualists believe that Cleopatra herself wore eyeshadow made of ground-up lapis lazuli to invoke protection and spiritual insight. Ancient Egyptians also favored carnelian and turquoise. In the ancient text of the Vedas, we can learn that ancient India was huge on crystals as well. They believed that crystals were manifestations of cosmic energy, and they invented the chakra system and believed that certain gems could help balance a person's chakras and awaken any spiritual potential. Crystals continue to have meaning in ancient indigenous tribes, China, Greece, Rome, and even in Celtic and Norse traditions. And in the modern age, spiritualists have combined all of the knowledge from the past, allowing it to resurface. So today, different colored gemstones are associated with different chakras or energy centers within the body. Red crystals are associated with the root or base chakra, which is the one closest to the ground. And pink crystals are associated with the crown chakra, which is the one at the very top of your head. Both pink and red crystals are associated with love, passion, and emotional healing. These are stones like ruby and rose quartz. They're used in practices related to relationships, self-love, and healing. Orange crystals are associated with the sacral chakra, which is the one right above the root chakra. And yellow crystals are associated with the solar plexus, which is right above the sacral chakra. Orange and yellow crystals, like citrine and carnelian, are associated with manifestation, creativity, and confidence. Green crystals are associated with the heart chakra, which is, you guessed it, right near your heart, in between the solar plexus and the throat chakra. Some examples of green crystals are adventurine and jade. These are associated with abundance, growth, and healing, and they're commonly used for prosperity, fertility, and physical wellness. Blue crystals like lapis lazuli and sodalite are associated with the throat chakra, which is on your neck right above the heart chakra. Blue crystals are associated with mental clarity, communication, and wisdom. They're often used to help with self-expression, clarity, and intuition. Purple crystals are associated with the third eye and crown chakras at the top of your head. Purple crystals are associated with intuition, spiritual connection, and the third eye. They're typically used to amplify spiritual connectedness and to open the third eye. These are crystals like amethyst, lepidolite, and labradorite. As we reflect on all of this, we have to also consider again that there is no strong evidence proving crystals emit supernatural healing frequencies that cure illness or alter reality or anything like that. That's important to say clearly. But that doesn't necessarily mean people are just making everything up. Because humans are deeply responsive to symbols, rituals, expectations, and emotional anchors. And that's where psychology enters the conversation. Because even if crystals themselves don't possess mystical powers, human consciousness absolutely responds to belief and ritual. Psychologists believe that the power of crystals lies in the placebo effect. In 2001, Christopher French did a study with 80 participants. These participants were asked to individually meditate with either a real or a fake crystal, without them knowing whether the one they had was real or fake, and to report on any sensations or feelings they may have. They found that the reported effects were the same for both the real crystals and the fake crystals. Both groups reported that they felt a warm sensation while holding the crystal and felt an overall sense of well-being. The placebo effect alone is one of the most powerful phenomena in medicine, and a lot of people misunderstand it. Placebo does not mean fake. Placebo means that the brain and body respond to expectation, meaning, and belief. People can experience reduced pain, lower stress, physiological changes, and emotional relief simply because they believe something is helping them. That's not imaginary. That's measurable neuroscience. It's easy to imagine. Imagine someone holding a crystal and meditating. What happens? They slow down. They breathe deeper. They become intentional. They focus emotionally. They enter a reflective state. Their nervous system calms. Their attention shifts inward. Even without mystical energy, that process alone can create real emotional effects. And objects can become psychological anchors. Humans do this constantly. Wedding rings, religious symbols, special charms on your bracelet, photographs, gravestones. We attach emotion and meaning to physical objects all the time. So if someone carries rose quartz after heartbreak, maybe the crystal itself isn't magically repairing emotional wounds, but maybe it serves as a reminder to stay open, stay soft, keep healing, don't close your heart. That still has psychological value. And honestly, humans have always needed physical symbols to represent internal experiences. Crystals may simply be one of the oldest symbolic systems humankind has ever created. Now, here's the part where things become controversial, because spiritual communities often talk about vibration, frequency, energy fields, consciousness, and scientifically, some of those words are real. Everything in the universe does vibrate at atomic levels. The human body does generate electromagnetic activity. Your brain does produce electrical signals. Your heart produces measurable electrical fields. If you're new here and haven't listened to my previous episodes, I do go into more detail about frequency and vibrations in episode 6 if you want to check that out. So when spiritual people talk about energy, they're not completely inventing the concept itself. The issue is usually the claims attached to it. Science currently does not support the idea that crystals emit mystical frequencies capable of curing diseases or dramatically altering reality. There is no strong evidence for that. But here's where humility matters. Science also does not fully understand consciousness. We still don't fully understand subjective experience, intuition, altered states of consciousness, meditation, or even consciousness itself. And throughout history, humans often experienced phenomena before science understood them. At the same time, humans are also incredibly capable of convincing themselves of things that aren't true. So the challenge becomes, how do we stay open-minded without abandoning critical thinking? That balance is difficult, because once people become emotionally attached to a belief, they often move toward extremes. Either everything spiritual is fake, or every spiritual claim must be true. But reality usually lives somewhere in the middle. Now, we do also need to talk about something that may be a bit uncomfortable. And that's the commercialization of crystals. Because modern crystal culture has become a massive industry. And unfortunately, anytime humans search for healing, meaning, or spirituality, someone eventually tries to monetize it. So you'll see people claiming that crystals can cure diseases, or instantly manifest wealth, or remove all negativity, or unlock supernatural powers. And that becomes dangerous, because crystals should never replace medical treatment, therapy, evidence-based care, or mental health support. Using crystals for mindfulness or symbolism is one thing. Claiming they can heal serious illnesses instead of medicine is another. And honestly, any spirituality type idea becomes unhealthy if it discourages reality, responsibility, or critical thinking. A healthy spiritual practice should make someone feel more grounded, more aware, more compassionate, more intentional, but it shouldn't make them detached from reality. So, do crystals work? That depends entirely on what you mean by work. If you mean, do crystals possess scientifically proven supernatural healing powers? Then the answer is no. There is no strong evidence for that. But if you mean, can crystals influence human experience psychologically, emotionally, symbolically, or spiritually? Then the answer is yes, absolutely. Because humans are meaning-making creatures. Meaning changes us. Ritual changes us. Belief, focus, symbols, all of it changes us. And maybe that's part of why crystals have survived across thousands of years of human history. Not because the stones themselves contain magic, but because humans are constantly searching for ways to connect to healing, to hope, to nature, to mystery, and even to themselves. And maybe the real power was never fully in the crystal. Maybe part of the power has always been in human consciousness itself. Thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of The Expanding Soul. If you've enjoyed this episode, make sure to follow the show, leave a review, and share this episode with someone who's fascinated by the intersection of science and spirituality. And I'd genuinely love to hear your perspective. Do you believe crystals hold real energy? Do you think it's psychology, placebo, symbolism, something science hasn't fully explained yet? Let me know. And until next time, stay curious, stay grounded, and keep expanding. Bye, friends.